If you're thinking about moving to Richmond, there's one thing you need to understand right away. This metro area can feel completely different depending on where you live. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which part of Richmond actually fits your lifestyle. Within about 15 minutes, your lifestyle can completely change. You could live in a historic row house in the Fan and walk to coffee on Carey Street. You could be in a quiet cul-de-sac in Midlothian and neighbors know each other. Or you could have a few acres in Powhatan or Goochland where the only thing you hear at night is crickets. And all of that exists inside the same metro area. That's one of the reasons people love Richmond, but it also makes choosing the right neighborhood harder than people expect. Because if you pick the wrong area for your lifestyle, you'll feel it pretty quickly. So in this video, we're going to walk through how Richmond is actually laid out, the major lifestyle categories of the neighborhoods, and how to figure out which one fits you best. Let me give you a quick example. I worked with a family relocated from Northern Virginia not long ago. When we first talked, they were completely set on acreage. Their words were, "We want land, we want quiet." So we started looking at homes in Goochland. Big houses, long driveways, trees everywhere. It checked every box they thought they wanted. But as we kept talking through their search, I suggested something I recommend to every relocation buyer. Don't just look at the house, test the lifestyle. So they spent a weekend exploring different parts of Richmond. They drove their potential commute during rush hour. They walked around Carey Street at the Fan. They spent some time at Church Hill looking out over the skyline and the river. And halfway through that weekend, they called me and said something interesting. "Wait, we thought we wanted quiet, but we actually like being near things." That happens a lot here because in Richmond, moving 10 to 15 minutes in almost any direction can completely change how your day-to-day life feels. So when we start narrowing down neighborhoods, I don't begin with square footage or price. I start with something more important, your lifestyle. What does a normal Tuesday look like? What do you want your Saturdays to feel like? Because that's what really determines where you should live in Richmond. And the place where lifestyle differences show up the fastest is the urban core. If you want walkability and energy, you're going to be looking at Richmond's urban core. Neighborhoods like the Fan, Church Hill, Scott's Addition, downtown near VCU, most of the homes here were built between about 1900 and the 1940s. You'll see brick row houses, historic architecture, smaller lots, and street parking. That's the trade-off. You're not buying huge square footage here. You're buying location and convenience. And for a lot of people, that trade is worth it because life is simply easier. Now, something interesting about the housing here. Roughly 55 to 60% of people in these urban neighborhoods rent. That creates a younger, more mobile energy in this part of the city. Lots of professionals, students, and people who like being close to things. And demand for this lifestyle hasn't disappeared. Scott's Addition alone added thousands of apartments over the past few years, and they're still filling up. That tells you there's a real appetite for urban living in Richmond. Inventory in these historic neighborhoods is also still relatively tight. There simply aren't many new homes being built in places like the Fan or Church Hill. That limited supply helps protect property values over time. Now, of course, urban living isn't for everyone. Parking can be tight, homes are older, noise levels are higher than the suburbs. If you want a big yard, a 3-car garage, and quiet evenings, this probably isn't the right fit. But if you want to walk to restaurants, meet friends for drinks without driving, and feel like you're part of the city, this is where Richmond really shines. And one thing I always tell buyers, in neighborhoods like these, the block matters. One street could feel completely different than the next. So if urban living is something you're considering, don't just scroll Zillow and guess. Reach out and we can walk through the areas that actually fit your lifestyle. All right, now we shift gears. If the urban core is about proximity and walkability, the suburbs are about space, predictability, and stability. Think Western Henrico, Shore Pump, Glen Allen, Midlothian, Bon Air. Instead of street parking and historic row houses, you're looking at driveways, garages, and larger homes, and neighborhoods with larger homes, yards, and cul-de-sacs. The space is different. The loudest thing on your street might be a garage door closing or someone mowing their lawn on a Saturday morning. And that slower rhythm is exactly why a lot of buyers choose this part of the region. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest factors that drives demand out here: schools. Several school zones in Western Henrico and Midlothian consistently perform above state average. That's been true for years and has a real effect on housing demand. Families moving from DC or Northern Virginia will tour places like Churchill or the Fan and absolutely love the character. Then we walk through a 4-bedroom home in Midlothian with a 2-car garage, a cul-de-sac, and a backyard big enough for kids and a dog, and suddenly the conversation shifts. It's no longer about charm, it's about practicality and long-term living. Commutes in these areas typically fall somewhere in the 25 to 35-minute range, depending on the corridor and the time of day. 64 heading west tightens up during the morning rush. Powhite has its busy window, but compared to larger metro areas, most people still find Richmond commuting manageable. Yes, days on market for higher suburban price points have stretched a bit compared to the frenzy of 2021 and early 2022. But that's normalization, not decline. Inventory in many Western Henrico neighborhoods is still below what we saw before 2019, and that supply constraint helps stabilize values. New construction also continues to push west and southwest for a reason. Builders follow demand, and demand for single-family homes in strong school districts remains very consistent in this region. Spend a Saturday around Short Pump Town Center and you'll see the suburban rhythm pretty clearly. Families running errands, kids coming from sports practice, restaurants busy at brunch. It's active, but in a very different way than the city. Suburban Richmond isn't flashy, but it's durable. For a lot of buyers, that consistency is exactly what they're looking for. Now we're shifting again. This is the group of buyers who say, if we're moving, we want land. And one of the interesting things about Richmond is how accessible that lifestyle still is. You're not hours away from the city, you're just in a different environment. Instead of dense neighborhoods, you see longer driveways, tree lines, and homes that sit farther apart. At night, it gets noticeably darker and quieter than the suburbs. Hybrid work has played a major role in this shift. When people were commuting 5 days a week, living farther out was harder to justify. But if someone is only driving into the office 2 to 3 days a week, a 35 or even 40-minute commute starts to feel reasonable. Richmond home prices still sit noticeably below many Northern Virginia markets. It's not unusual for buyers to sell a townhome inside the Beltway and purchase a much larger home in several acres here. That difference in purchasing power is one of the reasons the region continues to attract relocation buyers. People buying acreage typically view it as a long-term lifestyle decision rather than a short-term investment. Now, let's be realistic about the trade-offs. You will drive more. Grocery runs require planning. Some homes have wells or septic systems. Internet speed is something buyers absolutely verify before writing an offer. But the upside is space. Room for a detached garage or workshop. Room for boats, hobbies, or even small hobby farms. Kids playing in actual woods instead of behind a townhome fence. For buyers who want privacy and breathing room, this lifestyle can be incredibly appealing. And this is one of the reasons Richmond's housing market is so interesting. Within about 45 minutes, you can move from an urban restaurant district to a suburban cul-de-sac to acreage surrounded by trees. Few mid-sized cities offer that kind of variety. But once people start exploring these options, another factor becomes important very quickly: the commute. Richmond's average commute is about 25 to 27 minutes. On paper, that sounds pretty easy, but numbers don't always show what rush hour actually feels like. This isn't Northern Virginia, Atlanta, or Orlando gridlock, but Richmond traffic is definitely corridor sensitive. Another factor newcomers sometimes overlook is job distribution. Richmond doesn't revolve around one central employment hub. Downtown hosts state government and finance. VCU Health is a major employer, West Creek and Innsbrook attract a lot of corporate offices. Chesterfield has its own business corridors as well. Because jobs are spread out, commuting patterns can be unpredictable. Someone living in Henrico might work in Midlothian. A Chesterfield resident might commute towards Innsbrook. That cross-metro travel has increased over time. Hybrid work has helped reduce daily traffic volumes, but peak windows between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening still see noticeable congestion. One piece of advice I always give relocation buyers: never test your commute on a Sunday afternoon. Drive it during a weekday rush hour. That gives you the real picture. When you match your home location with your work location, Richmond commuting can feel very manageable. Richmond continues to see steady inbound movement from higher cost markets, particularly from the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions. And a significant number arrive with higher than local median incomes or with equity from homes they sold in more expensive markets. That changes the dynamic of the housing market. For someone relocating from DC suburbs, Richmond homes can feel significantly more affordable, even at today's prices. But not all of those buyers choose the same neighborhoods. Some are drawn to walkable urban areas like the Van or Churchill. Others prioritize suburban school districts, and many choose acreage once they realize they could have more space here. The result is a segmented market. Urban, suburban, and outer county housing all attract different groups of buyers. Your budget in Richmond doesn't just determine the home you buy. It often determines which version of the region you experience. After rapid appreciation between 2020 and 2022, the market has shifted into more moderate growth. Inventory remains relatively tight in the 350 to 600,000 range, which is why competition is still common in that segment. Around 300,000 buyers are often looking at smaller homes in eastern Henrico, parts of Mechanicsville, or townhomes in some of the suburban areas. Move into the mid-4s and more suburban options open up in places like Midlothian or Glen Allen. You'll see larger homes, garages, and family-oriented neighborhoods. Use that same budget closer to the city and the trade-off changes. Instead of yard space, you might gain walkability and historic character. Once budgets reach the 650 to 800,000 range, the number of choices expands again. Buyers may consider established neighborhoods in the near West End, new construction in Moseley, or larger homes in outer counties. Another factor buyers sometimes overlook is the difference between city and county taxes, insurance considerations near floodplain areas, and HOA structures that affect monthly cost. Two homes priced the same can carry very different long-term expenses. In Richmond, budget decisions are closely tied to lifestyle decisions. With so many choices within a relatively small metro area, narrowing things down requires a structured approach. We start by looking at where you work and how often you commute. That helps identify the corridors that make the most sense for daily life. Then we look at budget ranges and the types of homes available in those areas. Finally, we talk about lifestyle, walkability, suburban quiet, or acreage privacy. When those three factors align, buyers usually feel much more confident about their decision. Richmond's housing market rewards that kind of clarity, because when buyers understand their priorities, the right neighborhood usually becomes obvious pretty quickly. Choosing the wrong neighborhood in Richmond usually isn't a financial mistake. It's a lifestyle mismatch. This region offers a lot of variety. Walkable historic neighborhoods, suburban communities with strong schools and stability, outer areas where you can have land and privacy without being too far from the city. Understanding those differences makes the decision much easier. If you're planning a move to Richmond and want help figuring out which neighborhoods actually fit your lifestyle, feel free to reach out. Call me, text me, email me, or grab a time on my calendar. My information is in the description. I help out-of-state buyers find home and feel at home in the Richmond, Virginia area every day. Let's find your perfect area next.